I still remember the way my voice trembled when I first tried to tell this story. Because even now, at 28, the memories have a way of pressing against my chest like something unfinished. My name is Marissa. I am Daniel's wife and Lily's mother. And if you passed by our house in the suburbs, you'd probably think we were the picture of ordinary happiness. White fence, trimmed hedges, a little swing set that creaks when Lily plays on it. To neighbors, it looks like peace, but to me, it's always felt more like a shell. A thin layer covering years of silence, doubt, and the kind of wounds no one talks about at block parties. When the sun hits our living room just right, Daniel says it feels like home. I want to believe him. I want Lily to grow up knowing laughter instead of whispered arguments or the hollow feeling of being invisible. But sometimes, when the house gets too quiet, I hear echoes from long ago. From a childhood where being forgotten was normal. That's why I hold Lily a little tighter than most mothers. And why Daniel sometimes catches me staring at nothing. Lost in thoughts. I can't quite put into words. On the outside, everything about my life seems steady. I work from home. Daniel commutes. Lily has a favorite pink backpack she drags everywhere. Dinner is often messy, with spilled milk and crayons left on the table. But under it all, there's a current of unease. Like we're standing on borrowed ground. It isn't that I expect disaster, but more that I know how fragile peace can be when family has a way of breaking you from the inside out. That night, after putting Lily to bed, I found myself staring at the photo on our mantle, one of the few times we'd visited my parents. I traced the frame with my finger, my throat tightening. I told myself the past was behind me, that Lily would never know the same loneliness I carried. Still, deep down, I wondered if I was only pretending, if the calm life I'd built was just waiting to crack. That's where my story begins, not with joy, not with triumph, but with the quiet fear that even in the safest looking places, pain has a way of finding its way back in. The invitation came in the mail on a Tuesday, tucked between a grocery flyer and a bill we didn't want to open. I remember the way my hands froze the moment I saw the handwriting on the envelope. It was neat, deliberate, and instantly familiar. My sister, Victoria. I hadn't seen her in almost 3 years. And yet here she was, reaching across the silence with a single cream-colored card. I stood at the kitchen counter, staring at it far longer than necessary. Lily was coloring at the table, humming softly to herself, her pink backpack on the chair beside her. Daniel was reading the paper, his glasses slipping down his nose. He glanced up when he noticed the way my fingers trembled. "What is it?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I slid the card open and read the words slowly, like they might sting. An invitation to her daughter's birthday party. Casual, cheerful, signed with a flourish that almost dared me to refuse. My throat tightened. I could feel my pulse quicken, an old familiar unease settling over me. Victoria had always had a way of pulling me back, of testing the fragile walls I'd built around my life. Part of me wanted to tear the card in two, drop it straight into the trash, and never speak of it again. But when I looked up, Lily's eyes caught mine. She was watching me, curious, her head tilted. "What is it?" "Mommy?" she asked, her voice light and innocent. I forced a smile. "It's an invitation," I said, carefully placing the card on the counter. She hopped down from her chair and came over, her little hands tugging at my sleeve. "A party? Can we go, please?" Her excitement was so pure, so unguarded, that my chest ached. Daniel watched me quietly, knowing better than to press. He understood the weight that one envelope carried. I searched Lily's face, her bright eyes shining with hope, and I felt the old conflict stir inside me. Fear and longing wrestled in my heart. Part of me screamed, No. Protect her. Protect yourself. Another part whispered maybe. Just maybe. This time will be different. I finally nodded. Though my smile was thin. All right. Sweetheart. We'll go. Lily squealed and clapped her hands. Already dreaming of balloons and cake. I pulled her close. Inhaling the scent of her hair. Grounding myself in the present. As she ran off to her room, my gaze lingered on the invitation, still lying on the counter. I swallowed hard and whispered under my breath. No one can hurt us anymore, right? We pulled up to Victoria's house on a warm Saturday afternoon. The kind of day that smelled faintly of cut grass and sugar. Balloons in pastel colors bobbed at the front gate. Their ribbons tangled in the breeze. I could hear the thump of music even before Daniel parked the car. Lily shifted nervously in her car seat. Clutching the small stuffed bunny, she refused to leave behind. When I opened the door, she reached for my hand without saying a word. Her tiny fingers wrapping around mine as though I were her anchor. Walking up the path felt like stepping into a memory I hadn't asked for. The front porch was decorated with paper streamers. The kind Victoria loved. Perfectly coordinated. Bright. And loud. Through the window, I caught glimpses of people moving about. Laughter spilling out every time the door swung open. A knot formed in my stomach. Daniel gave me a steady look. The kind that said, "You don't have to do this." But Lily's eyes were wide with expectation. And I couldn't bring myself to turn around. When the door opened, the smell of vanilla cake and roasted coffee rushed out. Victoria stood there, her smile as polished as her pearl earrings. "Marissa," she said. Her tone stretched tight over old tension. "You made it?" I forced a smile and nodded, my voice catching in my throat as I replied. "Of course. For the kids, inside." The house was bursting with color balloons tied to chairs. Gift bags lined neatly on a table. Children running through the halls, squealing with joy. Yet, despite the noise, I felt strangely out of place. Lily clung to my side, her grip tightening each time someone brushed past us. A few relatives noticed us and offered quick greetings, their eyes darting away too soon. Like they weren't sure what to say. It was the same look I'd known all my life. That mixture of pity and judgment wrapped in politeness. We made our way toward the living room, where the party seemed to pulse with life. Children gathered around the cake, chanting impatiently, while the adults clustered in corners with drinks, speaking in tones that shifted the moment we walked by. Daniel stayed close, his hand gently pressing against my back, guiding me through the crowd as though he knew every step cost me more energy than I wanted to admit. Lily whispered, "Mommy, can we sit down?" I bent low and nodded, finding a small spot near the edge of the room where she could feel safe. Her eyes followed the other children, half longing, half fearful. I smoothed her hair and whispered, "It's okay. Sweetheart, just stay with me." From where I sat, I could feel the undercurrent humming in the air. Laughter came too sharp. Glances lingered too long. Conversations hushed as we passed. It was the kind of tension you couldn't point to directly, but could feel settling on your shoulders like a heavy coat. We were family. Yes. But in that room filled with music, balloons, and cake, he had never felt more like a stranger. And though the celebrations swirled around us, my heart told me this gathering was not just about a child's birthday. It was a stage. And soon, we were about to be pulled into the center of it. The living room lights dimmed just slightly as Victoria clapped her hands and called everyone together. The chatter died down and the children rushed to the center of the room, their cheeks flushed from running, their voices still buzzing with excitement. Cameras clicked from every angle, aunts and uncles jockeying for the perfect picture as the pile of presents was carried in with great ceremony. I felt Lily stiffen beside me. She looked at the sparkling bags and glittering bows with wide eyes, her little hands clutching the plain white paper bag she had been given. She didn't say a word, but I could feel the tension in her grip as though her whole body was holding its breath. Daniel leaned close, whispering gently, "It's just gifts. Love. Stay calm." But he knew as well as I did that gifts in our family were never just gifts. The first present was opened with squeals of delight, a dollhouse bigger than Lily's play table. The next, a shiny set of roller skates with matching pads. Every child called forward beamed as they pulled tissue paper from boxes. The adults cheering, cameras flashing. Lily edged forward each time, hope flickering across her face like a candle struggling against the wind. Victoria stood in the center, orchestrating it all with the grace of someone who knew she was being watched. She laughed loudly, her hands fluttering at each exclamation, her eyes sweeping the room. When they landed on me, I felt that old, familiar chill. It wasn't warmth in her gaze, it was calculation. Like she was waiting for something. Finally, Victoria's daughter unwrapped a sparkling new bicycle, the kind that gleamed like a trophy under the lights. The room erupted in cheers, the child parading proudly, while the adults snapped endless photos. The air felt thick with sugar and applause. And yet, I sat frozen, because I knew Lily's turn was coming. When Victoria finally gestured toward Lily, the room quieted just enough to notice her hesitation. My daughter stood, clutching the plain bag, her cheeks pink with both anticipation and fear. She looked back at me for reassurance. I smiled, though my throat was tight, and nodded for her to go. She stepped forward, small and tentative, her bag looking pitiful beside the glittering mountains that had come before. The silence was brief but sharp, like the air before a storm. A few relatives shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting from Lily to me, then back again. I heard one muffled laugh, quickly covered by a cough. Lily held the bag out with trembling hands, waiting for Victoria to announce her gift the way she had for the others. But Victoria's smile was thinner now, less polished. She took the bag with exaggerated care, holding it up for everyone to see, as if the plainness itself was part of the spectacle. "And this one," she said, her voice almost playful, "is from our sweet Lily." Cameras lifted again. Though the flash felt colder this time, I could see Lily's chest rise and fall rapidly, her eyes darting around the room. For her, this was the moment, all the waiting, all the hope, all the silent prayers, that maybe, just maybe, she would be treated like the others. I reached forward instinctively, but stopped myself. I wanted her to have her moment, even as dread twisted inside me, because deep down, I feared what I already knew, that this wasn't going to end the way she dreamed. Victoria slid her manicured hand into the bag, as if unwrapping a treasure. The room leaned forward, waiting for the reveal, for a heartbeat. I let myself hope. Maybe it would be something small but thoughtful, something that would let Lily feel included. Instead, and the first item she pulled out was a broken yellow pencil. Its tip snapped clean off. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd, followed by stifled laughter. Then came a worn pink eraser, its edges frayed from use. My stomach clenched. Next was a piece of sticky peppermint candy, its wrapper half melted against the paper. And then the final blow, a folded scrap of paper. Victoria held it up like a prize and read aloud with a smirk, "Do better next year." Her voice carried over the room, sharp and cruel, dressed as a joke, but meant to cut. I felt Lily's small body go rigid beside me. She didn't cry. Not yet. Her wide eyes searched the room, then found mine, silently asking what she had done wrong. My throat burned as I forced back tears. I wanted to scoop her up, to shield her from every staring eye. But my feet felt glued to the floor. The laughter around us was muffled, awkward, but it was their people covering their mouths. some pretending it hadn't happened, others shifting uncomfortably but saying nothing. Daniel's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, his hand firm on Lily's shoulder. In that moment, the world narrowed to just the three of us, standing in the middle of a celebration that felt more like a stage for cruelty. My daughter's cheeks flushed with shame she didn't deserve, and I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go. Ugh. I reached for her hand, and she clung to me with a desperation that pierced me deeper than anything Victoria could have planned. Daniel gathered the diaper bag we no longer really needed, but still carried out of habit. And without another word, we turned toward the door. The sound of laughter and chatter rose behind us, trying to drown out the truth of what had just happened. No one stopped us. No one called after us. As we stepped outside, the air was cool and sharp, a shocking contrast to the heavy sweetness inside. Lily buried her face into my side, her little shoulders trembling. I kissed the top of her head and whispered, "You didn't do anything wrong?" The words cracked in my throat, because I knew she might not believe them. Daniel opened the car door and helped Lily climb in. I stood for a moment on the curb, staring back at the glowing windows of Victoria's house, the balloons bobbing in the breeze, the sound of laughter muffled by walls that had always felt like a fortress of exclusion. Then I slid into the passenger seat, closing the door with finality. As the engine started, I held Lily's hand in mine, and though I tried to keep my face calm, inside me a storm was rising. This was no longer just about a cruel joke. It was a wound being passed from one generation to the next, and I knew I had to find a way to stop it. The ride home that night was quiet, but my mind wasn't. As the streetlights blurred past the car windows, I was pulled back into a place I thought I had left behind long ago. The sight of Lily clutching that empty bag had cracked something open in me, something raw and unhealed. And just like that, I was 10 years old again. It was a Saturday in late March, my birthday. I remember waking up to the thin sunlight slipping through the blinds, my heart pounding with anticipation. I had been waiting all week, hoping maybe this year would be different. I imagined a cake with my name written in bright frosting, maybe even a present wrapped just for me. Children live on hope, and I was no different. But when I padded barefoot into the kitchen, the smell of coffee and toast filled the air. Not cake. My parents sat at the table, flipping through the newspaper. My sister, always the shining one, was already dressed for her dance recital, her curls tied with a satin ribbon. "You'll have to hurry, Marissa," my mother said without looking up. "We don't want to be late for your sister." Humstag. I stood there, silent, waiting for someone to remember. When no one did, I whispered, "Today's my birthday." The words felt small, almost ashamed. My father glanced at me, then shrugged. "You'll survive. Not every day is about you." My mother sighed, handing my sister a glass of juice, and added, "You should be more like her. She gives us something to be proud of." And the chill of those words cut deeper than the forgotten cake. They made me invisible in my own home. No gift, no card, not even a candle. Just the quiet message that I didn't matter enough to be celebrated. I spent the day sitting in the back seat of the car as they cheered for my sister, my birthday dissolving into someone else's spotlight. That night, lying on the thin mattress in my room, I traced circles on the wall with my finger and tried not to cry too loud. I told myself I'd remember this feeling. The sting of being overlooked, the ache of being compared, the emptiness of being unseen. And I did remember, every year after, even when small tokens came my way. They felt like afterthoughts, like charity. The damage had already been done. So when I saw Lily's eyes at that party, wide with confusion and shame, it was like watching my own childhood replayed in front of me. I recognized that silence, the one that asks, "Why am I not enough?" It was the same silence that had followed me for years, shaping the way I saw myself, the way I doubted my worth. I thought I had buried it. I thought adulthood and distance had dulled the edges. But sitting in that car, with Lily's hand in mine, I realized the wound was still alive inside me. And unless I faced it, unless I broke it apart, I would risk passing it down to her like an inheritance no child should ever receive. I used to lie awake at night in that small, drafty bedroom at the end of the hall. The one my parents never bothered to repaint. The walls were faded, chipped from years of neglect, and the air always felt colder in there than in the rest of the house. Some nights I would curl under the thin blanket, trying to make myself small, swallowing sobs so no one would hear. Crying never brought comfort in my house. It only gave them more reasons to call me dramatic. Too sensitive. Too much. There were nights I pressed my pillow over my face to muffle the sound, whispering to myself like a secret, "One day I'll leave. One day I'll be free." It was the only thing that gave me comfort. The thought that someday I could outrun the cold walls, the sharp words, the endless comparisons. That vow became my heartbeat, steady and constant in the silence. I remember the way the shadows stretched across the ceiling, how the house creaked as my parents moved down the hall to tuck my sister in, voices soft and approving. Their love for her was loud and visible. Their disregard for me was just as loud in its absence. I wondered what was so wrong with me that I could be born into a family and still feel like an intruder. As I grew older, the neglect carved itself deeper. At school recitals, they barely looked up when it was my turn. At report card time, even when my grades were good, I'd hear, "Not as impressive as your sisters." Every milestone felt like it belonged to someone else. By the time I was 15, I had stopped expecting anything from them. I kept my head down, built walls around myself, and let the bitterness grow in silence. Yet the bitterness wasn't just pain, it was fuel. A slight, each forgotten birthday, each careless word piled up like kindling. And every night, in that cold room, I told myself I wouldn't carry this forever. When I turned 18, I'd walk out and never look back. I didn't know where I'd go or how I'd survive. But I clung to that dream, the way some children cling to bedtime stories. It was my lifeline, my escape plan, whispered into the dark. That vow shaped me. It made me tough, made me resourceful. But it also left scars. I carried the weight of neglect, in the way I doubted myself, in the way I apologized too quickly, in the way I sometimes mistook cruelty for normal. The ache of those years never really disappeared. It just sank deeper, waiting. And now, decades later, seeing Lily in that living room with her plain white bag, it all came rushing back. The silence of my childhood wasn't just memory, it was alive, threatening to repeat itself through her. And that thought, more than any pain I had endured, filled me with a fire I couldn't ignore. When I looked at Lily clutching that pitiful little bag, I felt like I was staring into a mirror. Her small shoulders hunched in the same way mine had when I was her age, trying to shrink from the weight of humiliation. Her eyes darted around the room, not wanting anyone to see the shame she carried. It was the same expression I used to wear, an expression I knew too well, and the one that comes when a child learns she is invisible in her own family. It shook me to my core. I had always believed that by leaving home, by carving out my own life, I had broken free from the cycle. But there it was, circling back through my daughter. The past wasn't behind me, it was alive, reaching forward to grab hold of her innocence, the way it had stolen mine. For a moment, I was terrified. Terrified that no matter how hard I tried, history would repeat itself, that my little girl would grow up with the same hollow spaces in her heart where love should have been. I thought about the nights I cried into my pillow, the birthdays forgotten, the constant comparisons. Was Lily doomed to carry those same scars? But then something shifted inside me. Fear turned into fire. I realized I had something I didn't have back then, a choice. I was no longer a powerless child. I was a mother. And that gave me both the right and the responsibility to protect her. My parents had failed me, but I would not fail her. As we walked out of that house, their laughter trailing behind us, I made a vow so fierce it nearly burned in my chest. This ends with me. No more swallowed tears. No more polite silence. No more pretending things were fine. I would not stand by and let them crush my daughter the way they had crushed me. I glanced at Lily in the car, her face pressed against the window, silent tears streaking down her cheeks. My heart broke, but it also hardened. That was the moment I decided I would fight back. Not for revenge, not for recognition, but for her, for the little girl sitting next to me, and for the 10-year-old version of myself who never had anyone to fight for her. I whispered to her softly, "You're not alone, sweetheart. Not now. Not ever." She didn't answer, but her small hand slipped into mine. That single gesture sealed it for me. Whatever it took, whatever storms I had to walk into, I would not let her carry my pain. And so, in that quiet car ride home, between the silence and the tears, I crossed a line I could never uncross. I became a woman with a mission, and there was no going back. The night after that humiliating party, I sat at our kitchen table long after Lily had fallen asleep. The house was dark, except for the dim glow of the lamp above me. My mind raced in circles. I kept replaying the moment when she pulled those broken pencils and sticky candies from the bag. The cruel little note tucked inside. Every time I saw her face in my memory, my chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. That was when Daniel came into the kitchen, quiet as always, and set a cup of tea in front of me. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" he asked gently. I shook my head. "Not this time. They've crossed a line. And if I stay silent, I'm telling Lily it's okay for people to treat her like she doesn't matter. I can't let her think that." End quote. He pulled out the chair across from me and leaned forward. "Then we'll need to be smart. If you want the truth to come out, we need proof." End quote. That word proof hit me like a steady anchor. For years, my family's cruelty had been brushed off as exaggeration, as if my memories were too colored by emotion to count. But proof was undeniable. Proof had weight. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't just about confronting them. It was about shining a light so bright that they couldn't hide in their shadows anymore. The next few weeks became a quiet, relentless operation. Daniel and I combed through years of emails, text threads, and bank statements. We worked at night after Lily went to bed, sitting side by side at the computer, scrolling and clicking, copying and saving. At times, the silence between us was heavy, filled with the things we didn't have to say out loud. We both knew what was at stake. I found emails where Victoria mocked me to our cousins, turning my struggles into her punchlines. Daniel uncovered text messages between my parents and her, where they discussed helping Victoria out with money that was supposed to have been split equally among the family. Old bank records revealed transfers that were never explained, withdrawals that lined up suspiciously with the times I'd been told there was nothing left for me. Every discovery was a small wound, but also a piece of armor. I'd read their words dismissive, cutting, greedy, and, instead of collapsing under the weight, I felt myself hardening. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. The proof was there in black and white. Daniel was steady through it all. He organized folders, labeled files, and created a binder so thick, it barely closed. Sometimes, when I got overwhelmed, he'd put his hand over mine and say, "One step at a time. Marissa, just one more piece." His calm gave me strength to keep going. There were nights when exhaustion tempted me to stop, Part of me whispered that maybe it would be easier to just walk away. Cut these completely. And never look back. But then I'd think of Lily. I'd see her small hand slipping into mine in the car after the party. The silent plea in her eyes. That image drove me forward like nothing else could. When the binder was finally full, I placed my hand on its cover and just sat there in silence. It wasn't just paper inside. It was years of lies, betrayals, and dismissals, gathered together into something solid. It was the weight of my pain finally given form. And deep down, I knew it was also the beginning of a war. I'll never forget the morning I finally carried that thick binder to Victoria's house. The air was cool, the sun barely rising, and the streets still quiet. My hands trembled as I clutched the weight of those pages, years of evidence pressed between two covers. Daniel waited in the car, his presence steady, even from a distance. I walked up to her front porch, placed the binder squarely at her door, and stood there for a moment, staring at it. I wasn't leaving a gift. I was leaving the truth, something she could never twist or laugh away. Without knocking, without a word, I turned and walked back to the car. It didn't take long for the storm to break. By the afternoon, my phone lit up with calls and messages, first from Victoria, then from my parents, then from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. The anger poured in like a flood. How dare you? You've lost your mind. You're tearing this family apart. Their words tried to cut me down the way they always had. But this time, I had something they couldn't deny. Every insult only reminded me why I'd done this in the first place. Victoria was the loudest, her rage spilling into voicemails that I refused to listen to all the way through. She accused me of betrayal, of dragging her name through the mud. She claimed I was jealous, unstable, vindictive. But I didn't need to answer. The binder had already spoken for me. Daniel and I mailed copies to the rest of the family, uncles, aunts, distant cousins, so no one could claim ignorance or turn away. I knew it would split people down the middle. And it did. Some reached out in quiet support, saying they'd long suspected something wasn't right. Others stayed silent, their loyalty still tangled in old ties. But at least now, the truth had been set free. When Victoria realized her furious calls weren't breaking me, she showed up outside our house one evening, pounding on the door until her fists turned red. I stood inside, my heart racing, listening to her muffled screams through the wood. Lily was upstairs, clutching her blanket, wide-eyed with fear. That was the moment I knew it couldn't go on like this. Enough was enough. The very next morning, Daniel drove me to the courthouse. My hands were cold as I signed the papers, but I felt a calm certainty I hadn't known in years. Filing for a restraining order wasn't just a legal step, it was me drawing the final boundary. For the first time, I was telling my family, loud and clear, you don't get to hurt me anymore. You don't get to hurt my daughter. When I walked out of the courthouse, papers in hand, the world looked sharper somehow. The sky was a brighter blue. The air felt cleaner in my lungs. For so long, I had been carrying their weight on my back, bending under it, shrinking beneath it. And now, it was gone. Not all at once. Not completely, but enough that I could stand up straighter. That night, when Lily asked if everything was okay, I knelt down beside her bed and kissed her forehead. It's okay now, I whispered. They can't hurt us anymore. I saw her small shoulders relax. Her eyelids finally close without fear. And in that moment, I knew every sleepless night, every painful memory, every step toward this confrontation had been worth it. The fight was over. And for the first time in my life, I was free. It was a morning that felt different from all the others. Spring had finally settled in, with sunlight spilling gently across the yard, and the faint scent of blooming tulips drifting through the open window. I stood at the kitchen sink, coffee in hand, watching Lily step outside barefoot into the grass. Her laughter floated back to me, clear and unburdened. And for a moment I just closed my eyes and let it wash over me. That sound had once been dimmed by fear and shadows, but now it rang out like a promise of everything we had fought for. I realized, standing there, that I no longer woke up, bracing myself for the next phone call or the next knock on the door. The house no longer felt like a place under siege. It was simply a home. I could breathe. I could smile without it feeling like a fragile mask ready to crack. The heaviness that had followed me since childhood had begun to lift, piece by piece, leaving room for something new to grow. Lily has changed too. She walks taller now. Her shoulders no longer curled in as if trying to disappear. She speaks her mind with a confidence that still startles me sometimes. But in the best way, when she raises her chin to meet my eyes, I see a girl who has learned that her voice matters, that her worth isn't tied to someone else's cruelty. Watching her grow into herself has been the clearest proof that all the battles, all the sleepless nights, were worth it. Sometimes I still catch myself waiting for the past to come knocking again. But when those thoughts creep in, I remind myself of the truth. I'm not that frightened girl anymore. I am a woman who chose to draw a line, who chose to protect her child and herself, no matter the cost. That choice is what defines me now, not the years of silence or submission. On that spring morning, I walked outside and joined Lily in the yard. She handed me a small flower she had plucked, pressing it into my palm with a grin. I knelt down beside her, tucking it behind my ear, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely present. No ghosts hanging over me, no dread of what might come, just sunlight, laughter, and the quiet understanding that we had survived. As I looked at her, I thought about how healing isn't a straight path. It's messy, uneven, full of setbacks, but every step forward, no matter how small, is still progress. I wanted Lily to know that. I wanted her to see that even in the darkest chapters, there is always a chance to turn the page and begin again. I don't know what the future will bring, but I do know this. We are free to write it ourselves now. And that freedom, born from pain and struggle, is the most precious gift I could ever give her. Our story is not one of defeat. It is one of survival, of courage, of a mother's love strong enough to break cycles and build something new. And as the breeze carried the scent of flowers through the air, I smiled not with fear, not with regret, but with peace.